There is a valley in the Carpathian mountains where the old world is dying. Not all at once, not in fire, not in one great battle, but slowly. Through sickness, through fear, through hunger, through blood. Veil Sangora is already wounded before the vampires step into the open. The Black Death has reached its villages. Human authority is buckling under plague and panic. The old ruler disappears. Old legends begin to feel less like stories. And then Brencis arrives. Not as a creature hiding in the dark, as a ruler. That is the image at the center of the blood of Dawnwalker. A medieval valley broken by disease, taken over by ancient vampires who do not simply hunt humanity from the shadows. They organize it, they rule it, they demand blood from it. And somewhere inside that collapsing world is Coen, a young man caught between the human life he is trying to save and the vampire nature awakening inside him. This is the story as we know it before its release. The Blood of Dawnwalker has not released yet, so this is not a complete lore breakdown. It cannot be. There are still major pieces of the story we do not know, and some mysteries are clearly being held back for the full game. So this video is based only on confirmed pre-release story information. The world, the conflict, the characters, the central threat, and the unanswered questions still waiting in the dark. It begins in Veil Sangora. The Blood of Dawnwalker is set in a dark fantasy version of 14th century Europe, in a fictional valley located in the Carpathian Mountains. The developers have drawn from Central and Eastern European landscapes and cultures to shape that world, and the result is not a clean, heroic kingdom or some distant fantasy realm untouched by history. It feels older than that. Veil Sangora is made of forest, swamps, crumbling ruins, old mines, caves, and mountain paths, settlements with long memories and dangerous places beneath them. Veil Sangora is described as a land of myths and mysteries, full of monsters, cursed sites, and ancient legends. But what makes the setting interesting is that the supernatural is not separate from the human world. It is pressing into it. This is still a medieval society with villages, miners, nobles, old rulers, buried histories, and crimes that were already part of the valley before the vampires ever revealed themselves. The valley has a history tied to silver mining. Its capital, Svartrau, carries some of that legacy. Beneath the surface of its settlements are cellars, taverns, and hidden places where the danger is not always visible from the road above. All of that gives Veil Sangora the feeling of a place that existed before the story begins. It had power structures, it had wounds, it had legends people were already afraid of. Then the Black Death arrives. The plague is the first great pressure point in the story. It leaves people sick, families desperate, and entire communities afraid of what the illness means. Fear starts to blur the line between the infected and the cursed. And when human authority responds to that fear, it does not respond with mercy. It turns towards execution. That is where Coen's personal story crosses with the fate of the valley. His younger sister, Lunka, falls gravely ill. When the authorities decide she is cursed, they move to execute her. Then Brensis arrives with his lieutenants, and the world changes. Brensis is not just a vampire lord in the simple sense, he is ancient. The revealed material identifies him as a Roman noble, originally Caeso Burinus Laurentius, born in the year 131, who was eventually turned into a vampire. By the time he emerges in Veil Sangora, he is no longer just a man from the ancient world. He is something that has survived it. And in the chaos of the Black Death, Brencis and the Vrakiri step into the open and seize control of the valley. The Vrakiri are the vampire aristocracy, the masters of the new order. Brencis rules at the top, surrounded by lieutenants whose own histories stretch across different eras and different forms of violence. Xanthe was once a priestess in Greece, now an ancient vampiress marked by centuries of knowledge and fear. Ambris is the youngest of them, a former commoner who suffered injustice as a human and now uses vampiric power to settle all scores. Bakir was once a Central Asian warlord, and even as an immortal, he is still defined by bloodshed, violence, and the desire to be feared. Together, they are not presented only as monsters in the wilderness, they are a ruling class, and that gives the blood of Dawnwalker its sharper edge. The vampires do not simply destroy Veil Sangora, they replace its failing order with their own. Brensis saves some people from the plague, but that salvation comes with a price. The new regime demands blood. Villagers trade human blood for protection. The blood tax becomes one of the foundations of vampire rule. Protection becomes exploitation, survival becomes submission. The developers have also described vampire rule in terms of reshaped religion and humans treated almost like a herd. That does not make the vampires sympathetic, it does not soften what they are doing, but it does suggest that Rebel Wolves is aiming for something more layered than a simple monster story. This is also a story about power, who holds it, who suffers beneath it, and what people accept when the alternative is death. Before the Vrakiri, Veil Sangora had its own human ruler. One of the most important names we know is Xanthe Dragosti, the human Nias of the Vale. He disappears during the turmoil surrounding the vampire uprising, and his exact fate is still unclear, but the revealed material does not frame the old order as innocent. Xanthe is associated with cruelty, including the legends of Strike's Crag. That detail complicates the world before Brensis. The vampires are brutal, but the human order they replace had cruelty of its own. That does not excuse vampire rule, it gives the story a darker foundation. Veil Sangora is not a paradise ruined by evil, it is a wounded place where one form of power collapses and another takes its place. And caught between all of it is Coen. Coen is the protagonist of The Blood of Dawnwalker. He is a young swordsman, and the confirmed material also describes him as a former miner with silver poisoning. That silver poisoning is important. It is the reason he does not become a normal vampire. After Brensis intervenes in Lunka's execution and the chaos unfolds, Coen is ambushed, afflicted with vampirism, and left for dead. His family is taken by the vampires, but because of the silver already in his blood, he is able to resist complete transformation. He becomes a Dawnwalker, a man divided between two states. By day, Coen remains outwardly human. By night, the vampire side of him awakens. That duality is the heart of the premise. Human and vampire, day and night, restraint and hunger. A man trying to save his family with the same curse that threatens to change what he is. It would be easy to frame that as a simple power fantasy, but based on what has been shown, that does not seem to be the full point. Coen's condition is not just a source of strength, it is a source of pressure. The story is built around what he does with that power, how far he is willing to go, and whether the line between survival and monstrosity can hold when the time is running out. Because Coen does not have forever, he has 30 days and 30 nights. That time limit is one of the most important confirmed story details. Coen has a fixed amount of time to pursue his goals, and major decisions can advance the clock. Quest, skills, dialogue choices, and certain actions are tied to time passing. So this is not framed like an endless heroic journey where the world awaits patiently for the protagonist to decide what matters. The clock is part of the story. Coen's family has been taken, Lunka's condition remains uncertain, the Vale is under vampire rule, Brensis sits at the center of that new order, and many of Coen's major choices can cost time. That gives the personal stakes a different shape. This is not only about whether Coen can fight the vampires, it is about what he chooses to spend his limited time on. Does he focus on his family? Does he pursue revenge? Does he try to free Veil Sangora from the Vrakiri? Does he gather allies? Does he give in to darker methods when the world around him offers no clean answers? The full range of outcomes is not known yet, so that has to stay carefully framed. But the confirmed material does support this much. The blood of Dawnwalker is built around choice, consequence, and pressure. The developers have described it as a narrative sandbox. Objectives can be approached in different orders, characters can react to what Coen does, and at least some choices or even inaction can lead to consequences in the world. One example that has been discussed involves a village task being ignored, which can result in villagers dying during a vampire ritual. That kind of detail clarifies what the game appears to be aiming for. Not just choice as dialogue flavor, choice as something that can leave bodies behind. Again, we do not know the full scale of this system yet, but we know enough to understand the intended tension. The story is not only asking what Coen can do, it is asking what he has time to do, and what happens when he does not act. That is where the moral conflict starts to take shape. Coen is not making choices inside a clean moral landscape, he is moving through a valley where power has already failed ordinary people more than once. The old human order had cruelty of its own, the new vampire order offers protection through exploitation. Villagers may accept the Vrakiri because they are afraid, because some have been healed, or because survival can narrow the world down to whatever keeps you alive for one more day. And Coen himself is not standing outside that darkness. He carries part of it with him. He is part human, part vampire. A possible liberator marked by the same force that rules the valley. The revealed material suggests his choices may push him into darker territory. Feeding, corruption, blood hunger, and the divide between day and night all seem connected to the story's central identity. But the important thing is not to treat those pieces as answers before the game gives them. We know the story is interested in morality, survival, power, and consequence. We do not know every answer yet, and that uncertainty is part of the pre-release story. There are still major mysteries surrounding the blood of Dawnwalker. We do not know exactly what happened to Skender Dragosti after the Vrakiri rose to power. He was the human ruler before Brensis, but whether he died, fled, or remains important in some other way has not been fully revealed. We do not know what Lunka has become after drinking Brensis' blood. We know she was gravely ill, we know Brensis saves her through his blood, we know her condition is ambiguous, but it would be wrong to say she is confirmed as a vampire or to define her fate before the game does. We also do not know the full meaning of the Dawnwalker itself. Coen's partial resistance to vampirism is confirmed, and his silver poisoning explains why he does not fully transform like the others. But whether Dawnwalkers have a larger history, myth, or unique place in this world remains unclear. Beyond that, Veil Sangora still holds its own unanswered questions. The Lady of the Howling Keep is one of the strongest examples. The material describes a ghostly figure connected to a haunted manor that can appear or vanish, luring innocents to doom. But whether she is a spirit, a vampire, a witch, or something else entirely has not been confirmed. The same is true of the monsters beyond the vampires. Veil Sangora is full of them, but their origins and deeper connection to the valley's history are still unknown. And then there are the larger questions. What role does religion truly play under Brencis' rule? How much power do human collaborators have? How organized is resistance in the valley? How far can Coen's choices change what happens? What endings are possible? And what does saving his family actually require? The blood of Dawnwalker has revealed enough to understand the shape of its tragedy, but not enough to pretend we know the whole legend. What we know is this: Veil Sangora is a dark fantasy valley in the Carpathian mountains, weakened by plague and haunted by old history. The Black Death creates a crisis that human authority fails to answer with mercy. Brencis and the Vrakiri seize the moment, overthrow the old order, and establish a vampire regime built on blood, protection, fear, and control. Coen loses his family in the chaos. His sister Lunka is saved by vampire blood, though the meaning of that salvation remains uncertain. Coen himself is afflicted, but not fully consumed, becoming a Dawnwalker. Human by day, vampire by night, and trapped between both. He has 30 days and 30 nights not to solve every mystery in the world, not to cleanse every shadow from Veil Sangora, but to decide what matters most before time runs out. That is the story so far: a dying valley, an ancient vampire ruler, a family taken, a man divided, and a clock already moving. The blood of Dawnwalker is not fully known yet, but what has been revealed is enough to make the central tragedy clear. This is not just a story about fighting monsters, it is a story about what happens when monsters inherit a broken world and the person standing against them may have to carry the same darkness himself. Not for power alone, for family, for survival, for whatever remains of the world he is trying to save. Because Coen's struggle is not only against Brensis, it is against time, hunger, fear, and the possibility that saving what remains of his humanity may require using the very curse trying to claim him. And until the full game releases, that is where the story waits. In the space between sunrise and nightfall, between blood and mercy, between the man Coen was and the thing he may yet become. If you guys enjoyed this video and want to see more Blood of Dawnwalker content, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.